If you follow the principle about what had happened and what happened, you can't get anything that's more closer to home to anyone. I mean, children are precious. To lose one, we can only but imagine what it's like. There's that old saying, isn't there, something about parents shouldn't have to bury their children, they should be burying their parents. How often that rings true these days. I must say that as much as there's been lots of work, I wouldn't begrudge 1 minute of it, and it's been an amazing journey, one that when you start out you think, wonder where this will end, and look where we are.
We know that police and SES started searching the area out here up to a week prior to the arrest and charges being laid in relation to Daniel's suspected abduction and murder. And so they had come out here to begin a preliminary search, I guess. And it was on Saturday, August 13th, that Brett Peter Cowan was charged with Daniel's abduction and murder. There were 5 charges laid. Now, 2 of those charges relate to Daniel being taken from the bus stop at Woombai. So those 2 charges were deprivation of liberty and child stealing. The 3 other charges relate to the alleged crime scene, and they involve indecent assault of a child under 16, murder, and interfering with a corpse.
We do a lot of pro bono work, and we're a member of QPILCH, which does pro bono work. What it's about is we should be out there for those who deserve or are deserving, who can't afford it. They should be able to have a go. I often say that the best law that you can ever breed, so to speak, is law that is challenged on a principle.
Well, really from the first day, Bruce and I made a pact that we were never going to give up on Daniel. You know, we said we'd always find a way to find him. I suppose every day you get up, you walk past his photo and you sort of say, yep, maybe today. But the day that we got the news of the actual arrest was like it was just a complete shock, because it's a day that you're sort of waiting for, but never really expected it to happen.
Hi Peter, it's Kristen from the Courier Mail. How are you? I just wanted to talk to you about a story that we're looking at doing for Saturday's paper. We've been speaking to Bruce and Denise about some of the people who they feel have made a significant contribution to getting the investigation to this point, and your name was raised. The bus that Daniel was waiting for actually broke down and didn't arrive, and the next bus, which came a short time later, it was running late, so it actually kept driving along this busy road and didn't stop for Daniel. We know that witnesses have said at that point, when that bus went past and didn't stop, Daniel's head went down, in I guess in a gesture of disappointment. So we're coming up to Kings Road now, so we'll take that road, and it'll take us down to a macadamia farm at the end of that road, which is quite hidden away, but it's actually only about 500 metres from the Bruce Highway.
This case sort of acted as a touchstone for amateur sleuths and aspiring Sherlock Holmes almost. Everyone had a theory, everyone had an idea, and because the Morcombes were so open to any angle, they were quite happy for people like myself to give them a call and say, well, I've been told X and Y, what do you think? And they were always more than happy to give their thoughts on it and share what they'd been told by the police, provided it didn't compromise the investigation, obviously.
This is where police believe that Daniel was brought on the afternoon of December 7, 2003. You can imagine it would be quite a terrifying journey for a 13-year-old boy. So we're now in the Beerburrum State Forest. So as you can see, it's very dense bushland. And it does feel quite isolated.
Oh, mainly because it's really been my pleasure to do that. They're such good people, and
you can just tear yourself apart if you're always being negative and saying the what if. You know, what if it wasn't raining? What if Danny, didn't experience a bus breakdown? All those what ifs, but what's the point of it all? You can't change any of that. So we really get up every day and say we're going to make a difference in finding Daniel, finding who's responsible, and more within the foundation. We're going to make sure that other kids are safer and don't find themselves in the predicament where Daniel was. And if they do, they've got some skills to remove themselves from that occasion and recognise that it is dangerous and go and seek help.
He's the boy you see in the photos. He was a very quiet, unassuming character who was very polite, great with his mates, had a great sense of humour, and interacting with them. So he was just a really nice kid. Well, it was the end of term, the last time I saw Daniel, and he was. It was just the end of art, so I only had him for a term during that year. So I saw him throughout the rest of the year, but not in a class sense. He had some interesting little cartoon figures that he used to draw, which were quite funny and humorous. We've continued to think about him. I think that has kept up the sense of remembering him as well. And his memory is still very vivid, and where I've taught him, and specifically where he was in class and where I taught him, I still remember that clearly.
Strength. I don't know how they get up every day. So that's just one of the things that you have to deal with.
The Morcombes are the most tenacious couple I think I've ever come across in something like this. The moment this occurred, they made it very clear to journalists that they would work with them to try and find their son's killer, and they kept up the pressure for 8 years. They were absolutely relentless in their determination to find this person or persons. And Bruce had a wonderful comment. I think he said this many times, but he said it again when the most recent arrest was made, which was that the person who did this picked on the wrong family, and that has become so apparent.
They did. No one probably expected the family to keep going and going and going and going. It hasn't been easy for 7.5 years, just to get up every day and keep going. We owe Daniel more than that, so.
I think the thing that I most appreciated in recent times is they didn't really know what they were getting into in the inquest. They had no idea, truly. They were going to turn up themselves. And I said, you'll get slaughtered if you do that. And I said, you just can't go in there on your own. And they accepted that and then asked me, would I do it or did I know someone else? And, they were so humble about all that process. And once we got into the inquest, they did really realise what a big mistake it would have been if they weren't represented.
So this search area here in the Glasshouse Mountains, we're at the end of Kings Road, and behind me is a macadamia farm. Just further north of the macadamia farm is a dam and a small swampy area, which is a former sand quarry. The search for Daniel Morcombe is focused on a small patch of bushland. It's about 91 square metres between the macadamia nut farm and the swampy area. Now, we discovered where this search area was the day after Brett Peter Cowan was arrested, and between August 13 and now, I'd say I've been out here probably about a dozen to 18 times.
When we got towards the end of the inquest, there was no doubt that inquest was extremely valuable, and it was no doubt that it was necessary. And who drove that? The Morcombes. No one else drove it. They were on their own, asking the coroner for the coroner's inquest. That was against advice, was their judgment, and that's why we're where we are. And that shows some teeth, given where they've been, and there'd been a lot of investigation, but they still wanted to know. And that's that drive that you just can't buy. And when Bruce says they picked on the wrong family, they really did.
I think they were active participants in the investigation process, and again I say that they weren't interfering with the police investigation in any way, but they were kept informed. I think it's already been established that they had a bat phone straight to the Commissioner, which they had a mobile phone where the Commissioner had their number, and he would inform them of any major breakthroughs in the case. But yeah, they maintained their own interest, forensic kind of interest in all the evidence that was coming in, and they had their own theories, and they were hugely involved in the investigation process, from what I could gather.
The evidence that's been retrieved, the bones and Daniel's shoes, etc., that have been found. What is it we do with those? And obviously we're talking about a burial and a funeral, and how the family copes with that that personal tragedy and that event, but also how we manage the media, and there'll be considerable interest right around the country in that, and we don't really have an answer. We're still trying to work through the timelines and what the event may be, but also we're trying to get a head around of how the family will cope with the court case, and obviously the trial, and perhaps the what ifs. We're aware that Supreme Court plus appeal, potential of High Court plus appeal. It won't be an easy process and may take quite a number of years. So we just try and mentally factor that in, that it's not done yet.
The other thing, he was a master at saying we just need one skerrick of evidence, or we need one break, there'll be someone out there. And there were times that there were crackpots, absolute crackpots, that I didn't appreciate how many there were until I started to get some, because your name gets published, and you say to Bruce, how many of these you had to deal with? He said, well, I deal with them all because they might have that skerrick of evidence, so I don't reject anyone, no matter. So he was forever open, whereas I'm bloody sure I couldn't have done that. I'd have just said, crackpot, not deal with them. So, and the other most striking thing of the Morcombes, when we were in the inquest and we were questioning police about whether they'd done their job, that was early days, and was the walk for Daniel, and he was interviewed on ABC radio. We'd certainly thrown a fair bit of certain number of views about the way in which it had been conducted at that point. And I was driving to Brisbane after the walk, and I heard him interviewed, and he said, and he was asked about that issue of whether there'd been sufficient investigation. He said, well, we always expected there'd be bumps on the way, and at the end of the day, we're all on the same side. So the process was about finding out if there were bumps and could we fix them. That's an amazing insight. You know, this is a father that can find his son.